it's amazing because, we've got all these events that are happening, and, of course, we've got 2012, like a final countdown for December 21st, and then we've got February 14th as an event. A lot of earthquakes have occurred. I think it was sort of like in the 50s and 60s where there was earthquakes like that a bit, I think, as that sort of really built up to the magnitude that they have. I think every country sort of has had earthquakes and things, recently. But it's amazing because if I think if people want reform in banking, they should just tick the box yes. That's all really, isn't that amazing? But as you listen into these programs, of course, the moratorium really is just a breathing space. Like take a break. You've got to take a break, don't you? I think if things are not working as they should, people should take a break on that, and that's what a moratorium is, which is the grassroots movement of we the people, and the people getting working again. But you are related to people. You go back 30 generations. You are connected, in some way to everyone alive today. And then certainly by the 50th generation that you're just going back, this is really including everyone certainly alive today. You only really need one genetic connection, Lukey. You know what I mean? In 1,000 years ago, really, that's all, to connect all of China and Africa together. Everybody's related. No shortage of any tent-dwelling Marco Polo or any restless young blood, no shortage of these two sort of exist anywhere. But it's possible sort of for any living spirit to be a copy of another person. It's just not possible for that. Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it? But it's amazing that we all have something that we share with each other in our hearts, and that which is our universal inside our hearts that we share with each other, and we have in common. We should really stick with these things. But I think what reason really is there in history? Does a brother really, as a living spirit, be seen to be shaking hands today and yesterday, as a pattern of observedness with a brother, that's on the opposite side of a war, for instance? And is that an aiding? I don't think so. I think that's actually really doing everything we can to assist a friendship, rather than aiding enemy. And that, but if you're other than able to correct errors, that's wrong, And then where are you correcting errors? Because everybody knows that these errors existed, and is that all that's existed, more or less? But then, but during a war and after a war, people could really be good friends, and then they shook hands. Isn't this sort of always true? If you think about the past, but can you think of a time past it sort of wasn't really? And then what happened in that situation? I think it's more common that people become good friends again, and they shake hands, and then sort of like, what happened there? Did anybody say war was a bad mistake? I think that's true. I think the vast majority of people, actually, when they look back at stuff like that, they say, my God, what a horror. sorry, sorry. But how many times in history do you know where this really is being incurred, ongoing even now? So I think it really should be a final countdown for Eclipse 2012, December 21st. You've got February 14th, 2013. But shouldn't people tick the box you want reform in banking, you know? I mean, that's all that really, it's a path of least resistance, you know? And the joker could really be on a stool, the thinking sort of a joker with a hat, and then the striped white lines that you can make the joker out on the T-shirt is sort of like who wants the growth of $100 bill sort of thing. Yeah, but a significant sort of progress and increase more in awareness of I can be occurring as we have economic egalitarianism as one of the very platforms of being for us, you know, in our programming and things. But why not just tick the box, yes, you want reform in banking, you know what I mean? And isn't it time, folks, you know, that a moratorium exists and why not just take a break, take a breather? You know, I mean, things are not working like they should. Shouldn't people be requested to know how money is created? I mean, why don't they? If you ask somebody, the vast majority of people I ask, I mean, it's obvious that they just don't know. Well, they should, shouldn't you? But you could also need to take a look at what is really now becoming more known as like even a basic building block toward this movement, which really is constitutional money and having, again, a constitutional remedy in a judicial system and things, and then the people get working again. But even the basic building block of a cell in colloidal biology is a colloid of life and a life colloid. And a cell is not the original building block of the body, but a colloid of life and a life colloid is in colloidal biology. This is really the age of Aquarius, where, you know, you're really having a most amazing interest, you know, and pleasure really, and this is really creating whole brain functioning. And Judd, of course, my research at NYU in the 80s and 90s show this, that interest and pleasure cause whole brain functioning, and they create whole brain functioning. They cause an integrated brain, and aversion causes limited mind function. But it was only sort of really, you know, 1839. A cell is a vessel of living matter, sort of kind of discovered under a microscope, sort of thing. A cell can be kept outside the body, alive, and certainly indefinitely as totally a free creature. Wasn't that amazing? I mean, a body cell just does, you know, by itself, sort of. But of course, cells don't really live by themselves. But back then, body cells kept alive indefinitely, you know, as totally free sort of creatures, and they can be seen to be perfectly free creatures, except, of course, when, you know, the donor could have been emotionally averse or under emotional adverse condition, then those cells also respond in the same way as if they're still connected to the body. But it's amazing that at the moment a peg, like a metal peg or a wooden peg, that's holding what's useful, for instance, really any material. But if a peg is able to be rested a little bit, it can remain ever stronger and last a lot longer. But if you rest it much, much longer than should be, then there's a great laziness that comes to be, and actually it becomes a weaker, actually. But the moment a peg that's holding what's useful is rested longer than a month, let's say, of vacation or more, it like a house not lived in, it slowly falls apart. And just like a being, there's a time frame. But certainly we could say a year is a moratorium, and that's a very short time to go by for the right decisions to be made in reforming in banking and the growth of money and there being constitutional money again. But a peg also holding something with small intervals, as we're talking about, of rest is incurred. The material of the peg sort of really is able to be recovered quite beautifully. And isn't it amazing that even metal can be treated just with a little bit of shock, and then it can be recovered of its strength, and it can have lost its movement toward its brittleness, sort of thing. But just like a body, but can last much, much longer. And then a house could be certainly made out of materials that can last 1,000 years versus a house that maybe only lasts like 35 years. But the metal can be also shocked a little, as we could say, or treated, and fully be fitter and last, a lot longer. You see, we should really sort of have this final countdown to eclipse, 2012, December 21st, and then we've got February 14th coming up, and these sort of eclipse moments. But we should move toward, as this is sort of like an engine in the future, as the countdown toward this to have everyone become more aware of tick the box what reform in banking and the eclipse movement. But even a single cell isolated moves really sort of deliberately around Lukey, like it even could be just like it's sniffing and looking around, like even going into the kitchen and looking in the fridge and things, that sort of stuff. But even a single cell sort of isolated, like in a test tube, it's amazing that you can see this under the microscope, really deliberately sort of moving around, totally independent of the living spirit as it's moving like this, like it's doing what it can, like if it was going to get to a 7-Eleven store or something, But we're made up of multiple life colloids, as spores, double spores, bacteria, cells, mold, fungus, yeast, and this makes up a body symbiotically, which is mutual lived assistance in biology. But yet in the protoplasm, if you look under the microscope, at the nucleus, you can see extremely sophisticated, intelligent network, of tubules that are made. You really it could be looking like you're just looking down on subways and roads and streets and houses, existing down there. But certainly it's really teeming with things moving and traffic and stuff. And you've got surface, air, and sea transportation, and you see there's a lot of passengers, it looks like, in cargo, and fuel being taken on board and delivered and things. And if you look really inside the houses, seemingly, you can see even on shelves and stuff, books left just like as if untouched, in the scene. But even accessories like sunglasses and stuff could have been found remaining on those shelves. Even quite a bit of energy had opened it up, but you could see this. But when looking further inside dwellings and stuff, this is sort of colloidal biology. There's a brand new insight into biology where the cell is not the original building block, but in life colloid and colloid of life is the original building blocks of life. But anyway, that's another story. Look, we've been talking just a little bit about how, as you're having this really beautiful interest in subject matter you've got before you, this is an interest which is really equivalent to you having and being in whole brain functioning. Whereas if aversion would have been in the past, well, then that would have always created limited mind function. For the moment of that aversiveness, it would have neurologically inhibited the pleasure areas of the brain, because you can't have these two things together. But it's amazing, that mercury, arsenic, and all these really toxic poisons have been used for cancer and all sorts of conditions like syphilis. I mean, mercury, and then if you go way back, syphilis sort of, which really is just a cleansing condition from debris being inside the colon and bile bladder and just, junk food, and then bringing body ailment newly in every day relentlessly. But the mercury was given to these people, arsenic, sulfur, recently even, and that's a poison, and that is always being used to cure, a cure of skin or some meat or something to pickle it. But in 1348, it would just seemed easy, apparently. But people were drinking out of lead, back there in Roman times, and they died at flies, and then a lot of them didn't make it, I don't think, to the age of 28 or something, that was an old person maybe. But, because of drinking out of lead. And, there's been in ages, of course, plague seemingly, like in 1348, and you've got 100 million people in Europe back then, and then half of those people, I think, just perished, just went quietly into the night. I think there was a bit of a struggle in this. They called it the Black Death, but Europe's total population was just completely cut in half. And that was in 1348. And then again, it sort of struck, halving all the survivors in, I think it was 1371. But this is really a time not really affecting the living spirit the same. And then there's a sort of a bit of a recoveredness, and then, but people are devastated. And then the third time is in 1840, of course. You've got the fungus blight, knocking out all the potatoes, and people sort of not having food, and a lot of people sort of starving, and that. And all back then were really even to learn that a yeast even was a living organism. I mean, I think you've got to say that there's been lots of ages where certainly, I've got to tell you, it is not sophisticated. I'm sorry. I think it's really a lot of error, a very gross error from my perspective. But I think that we should be having a movement as a moratorium and tick the box, yes, you want reform in banking, but knowing overcome really is more equivalent to I aware. Because knowing is sort of often getting in the way, and then ignorance even is a better thing, because then you're thinking to yourself, well, I'd like to know, yes, I'll tick the box, yes, I want reform. Why not? Why shouldn't people understand this? And then certainly when there is no discussion in the paper or at the UN, isn't that interesting? I mean, when you omit something, isn't that sort of some truth being glaring in your face? Why is that? I mean, But as you're speaking truth, this is equivalent to I awareness, and thou shalt not blaspheme against thy neighbour really is called lying, and that is very loud, in the Bible and a lot of these, all the religions. Because, and then we can talk a bit about that. We can get into this. We could talk a bit about the Max Planck Institute, which shows how negative gossip is worth far more than positive, and what the reason behind that is. And people would have even forgotten their own experience with you, that they could be remembered of as a result of becoming aware more of this going on, But I aware really is equivalent to what's mutually beneficial, Lukey. Always what's mutually beneficial. But if we go back to Virchow, he said that a cell comes from a cell, in 1859. He influenced the world up until colloidal biology has challenged that. But it's unchallenged till to this day, sort of thing, as this is become the hard science, which is colloidal biology, which is a colloid of life, and life colloid is the building block of cell and all of life. But also the language of peace really requires participants to frame things positively, just as a math, and you can't go around having something like non-violence and bring these two words, to, communication, these things together, because that it doesn't add up. But asking people to be peaceful and focus on being peaceful and framing things positively, and looking at our leaders' speech and quickly assessing to see what degree this person is coming from whole brain functioning. But a 4-year-old really is able to recognise no enemy in an ant. And a 4-year-old really is so easy, like a human. I mean, some intelligent humans, as a baby, is unbelievable. Yeah, they really are. Although humans born are far more intelligent than wolves, I'm telling you, all right? Yeah. But a 4-year-old really recognises no enemy really in an ant. They can crawl under a bush and things and feel fine. And they don't even be concerned much about a storm or a thunderbolt and things until they became spoiled and learned how to respond in another way. But yet really empathics, what's empathic, and your empathy and our empathy for each other, and how empathic is this leader's speech. That's very important, because the person's speech is not empathic with the other side, well, then that's just a warmonger, and the speech doesn't add up. So that's not good, is it? You know what I mean? But empathics really is an immediate human-born condition where your heart and my heart and our breath and people are inspiring together all over the world. Now, this is I aware. This is equivalent to knowing, overcome. That's right. Knowing, overcome. Get rid of all the stuff that you've known. You've got to gain a deeper perspective. And can you really have sloughed off whatever is your his story or your her story? I think that's the best thing that people can do, Lukey. Yeah. Anyway, how are you doing, mate? Good?
Yeah, I'm right around, 7-8%.
Amazing. Yeah, well, we could talk a bit about that percentage, because that's a model of excellence. 78% of people are in the danger zone. There's about a 15% that can be helped, I mean, there's a 7% sort of something which really is modelling excellence, but eye awareness really is beyond any causedness, and like learned helplessness, which learned helplessness and the New World Order, sort of are connected. But 2007 New York City lockdown, that's what went on. And you know what? 10,000 quality of life did go uninvestigated, and that is a fact. And so what responsibility do you have to people if you are not caring about, common law? But if weather weapons is used just like that, isn't that sort of eugenics, just like vaccination? Well, and Dakota being vaccinated against my will. But tranquilizers are equivalent to a loss of a spatial ability, and aren't a lot of these people being put onto tranquilizers? And our leaders even, right? I mean, a lot of them are being put on that, which we can think a bit about what that does cause, but it's equivalent to a loss of the spatial ability and awareness and a capacity to really work with any sort of complexity at all, and certainly not have the ability to hold two diametrically opposed conditions and maintain, a direction throughout still, right? But we're talking about virusites because people have really sort of got into positions of the Peter principle where they've promoted their own backsides to incompetence. But that's what we're allowing, you see. So what we're talking about is what we're allowing, you see. And that's what we're allowing. And when you pull your money out of your pocket to vote for something, this is what you're voting for. Yeah, that's a real vote, actually. But interest is like a bank account and pleasure to create whole brain functioning, and flow. And any damnness of that isn't right and won't create whole brain functioning, you see. So this is more spiritual. But this is the eclipse. It's really a moratorium time. It's let's take a breathing space. You know what? Tick the box. Yes, you want reform in banking. But can you have a positive impact on those around you? Isn't that what you really are supposed to be doing as a soldier or as a sailor or in the Air Force or police force? Or in government, or as a nurse, or as a doctor, or as a teacher, or a gardener, or transport, or banking, or what? Aren't you supposed to be having a positive impact on everyone around you? And aren't these people actually not red or blue really, but purple? I mean, start using a little bit of WBF, that whole brain functioning. You know what I mean? I think it really is time, Lurky, But, I think that as we just were left off yesterday in the program, I think people should really tune into these sequentially and learn. But as your mind is now more asleep, that's what we've been saying. This is more whole brain functioning. And you've got three really beautiful, deep insights of whole brain functioning and eye awareness. And then the first really is that the world really has appeared as a melodrama inside, and that could change, of course. But as you've thought, oh my God, yeah, the world disappeared as this huge melodrama. Oh my God, the world is so large, and that left you feeling small. That's completely false. I've been all over the world, mate, and I've walked all the way through Africa, I've done 33,000 kilometres, not miles, right? Got to say not miles, because you think that's miles if you're in America, because the rest of the world sort of is in kilometres. But 33,000 kilometres, mate, through Africa, yeah. Walked and slept on the ground. That's right. I've done that just to be able to know what's going on, right? Yeah. It's just like you're supposed to have whistle blowing where you are. That's called oversight, you drongo. So where is this going on? I mean, it should, and if it's not, and the opposite is, that's certainly not right, is it? And then the question of callousness as the United States goes on trial by holding Julian and Bradley Manning. But look, the world really is small, honest to God. Sorry about that, but the Earth certainly is. You've only got 4 weeks of oxygen, You're ripping through space, mate, you know what I mean? Just like a spacecraft itself, but you've only got 4 weeks of oxygen, really, at any one period of time. I'd like someone to step forward, tell me that's wrong. But, cow farting has caused more acidification of the sea, and the whole solar system has heated up, and certainly fossil fuel burning didn't create that. But fossil fuel did cause the seas to become acidified, But anyway, we should do a program all about this carbon fuel tax and the drongo-ish that's all behind that. But that's another story. The world sort of appeared as a melodrama, and really large and looming, and the self being really small is absolutely false. And the opposite really is true. And thinking as real is bull dust. Thinking as real is the biggest bull dust you've ever thought of in your life. I mean, that's a serious disappearedness, that phantom stuff, you know what I mean? Being joined with the phantom. You can't join the living being except with a living being. That's the law. That's a maximum of law. Are you listening? Do you understand what I'm saying? If you're doing something else, that's wrong. Stop. Learn to say no to harmful things. That's what whistleblowing is. You must be able to have disclosure and conduct to correct things. And if you can't, that's called retaliation. And isn't it retaliation going on to Julian Assange? Is he not a whistleblower? Right? Is not Bradley Manning a whistleblower? Yes, they are. I don't have heard anybody say they're not. I'd like to find out where somebody said they're not. That would be very important. But all the thinking, certainly that's real. Thinking that's real, it certainly disappears in eye awareness, all right? You've got to get rid of your his story and your her story. And your normal experience really is equivalent merely to an altered state, mate, And then eye awareness and whole bone functioning is about learning how to dehypnotize and be dehypnotized now, once and for all time, you know what I mean? But joy's really arising, from no action really needed at all. And but yet aversive programming that could have been the past could have been neurologically having been inhibiting in the past, the frontal cortex, you see, and that's not good. But whole brain functioning really came out of my research at New York University in the 80s and 90s. I did some seminal research into this, which shows this. But it came from, in the 70s, looking at Robert Heath's work at Tulane University down there in New Orleans. In the late 70s, early 80s. But whole brain functioning is New York University in the 80s and 90s. My research shows this. But because fear really is slowly dripped that is a disruption to ease, and words people are using, could have created that. I mean, if you have the opportunity to have a healthy child 49 times out of 50, that's a beautiful thing. But if I said 1 time out of 50 you could have a Down syndrome child, well, what do you got? You know what I mean? There's no such thing as negation at the primary level of experience, I've got to tell you. But, anyway, that's another story. Because disease really existed, and that's a disruption to the ease we ordinarily have, I think probably it's a fair thing to say, Lukey, that 78% of the world probably needs to be assisted. And I mean, here there's straight away, because maybe 78% of the people could be considered to be disturbed. But anyway, a child believes innocently, and that's the problem here. You see, you've got to frame things positively, you know what I mean? But a child sort of believes things innocently, anything told them, and then we're not supposed to be really doing anything more than what a 4-year-old could really do anyway. Otherwise, I think that might be a bit questionable, you know what I mean? But a program in place, Lukey, for truth, really, that's what we need. This is the light manual, the full light manual that we're getting into a little bit. But this really is eye-aware, yeah. But anyway, eye-awareness really is awakening to the totality rather than just sort of something being perfect, which is ridiculous. But if you really and I have enough element, then am is, the body. But if you don't, then you don't you? Or even I, not, and then they could both have been other than connected and flowing in a polar completeness. And then you're having more realized truth. But as you're having this, you're going to have more serotonin in the days to come. You would be thinking about these things and they would pop up, and you're going to be starting to teach the things that you're learning, which here, and then just forget the things of the past. That's ridiculous, and take hold of this. This is the age of Aquarius. And then even Christ was to look at the water poorer, to know what to do. But happy integrated eating and consumption and digestion and assimilation really is a behavioural balance in thinking and emotion and the things going on, including food. But or you've got sort of all sorts of uncontrolledness, uncontrolled bursts of emotion, and the 10,000 things, Lukey, all right, and a non-reasonableness and addiction and addictive behaviour, and that's equivalent to self-medicating, you know what I mean? And it's important that people can escape, but it's not the whole answer, is it? The old reptile brain present really is still intact. And it's sort of got a real animal instinct, I'm telling you, And if you corner a raccoon, man, I'm telling you, watch out. But they can really open up your fridge and take stuff out of jars and all sorts of things, raccoons. Just got hands like humans. But anyway, that's another story. Energy really in motion, Lukey, that's surface changeable, isn't it? And this is where all the banker and the count and the slot that money goes in wrongfully right now, and the social engineeredness being done to the children, McDonaldizing and then Duke boying the boys and people, and then just being Texas oversteppers, like rounding people up like sheep, you know what I mean, and not even caring about the children, you know what I mean? Isn't that just a social engineered, the same as the propaganda where you're not having a proper discussion in those 4 major media, and that's real obvious, and so that's the problem, do you know what I mean? It's so obvious, right? So that's what's wrong, you see. And so that's the reason why Alex Jones and all these people like that, I think Alex Jones is a very good example of like a Rush sort of limba of truth. Only, could have a bit more of what this is about, just simply tick the box you want reform in banking, because everything else is at the bottom of the cockie's cage until that's corrected, all right? But systemically and systematically downgrading or downgraded intelligence, which that's what sort of war is really, isn't it? It's a groveledness. And then war sort of, most of it's all be about banking, isn't it? Are you there, Lukey?
Yep. I was
mate.
listening to...
Got a few minutes?
Sorry.
Sorry, mate. We've got a few minutes on that.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. We got 4 minutes. 3.5 minutes.
Oh, gee. I'm so sorry that time distortion occurs for everybody. It happens just like a second, but we're getting over. But look, inaccurate program data is really what's going on if your brain's not in whole brain functioning. And 78% of the time, that's going on at least non-stop on the earth at the moment, because people are really in danger because of their thinking, which two negatives to make a positive, and polarity response and looping is signs of dissociatedness and fragmented and incongruent behaviour. So look, do the kinesthetic test. I feel like, the Mother Therese, certainly Florence Nightingale, a lot of these beautiful people who something was taken from them, we really feel unbelievable because they really were brave enough to stick up for us, you know what I mean, and care for us, and they can have suffered, but anyone who really, like the Buddha inside you, and certainly Kokopali, but if you do a kinesthetic test on people such like this, people test strong, and they really feel good, and studies show this for days afterward. But if you pick out any one of those other leaders, even movie stars, that'd be frightening if you go ahead and do it. You'd be so shocked to be discovered that people can feel very, very powerful and strengthened by some charismatic leadership and leaders, and versus the vast majority of people can be really, really testers, and versus the vast majority of people can be really, really testers, and versus the vast majority of people can be really, really testers,